I used to think subscriptions were the cleanest business model in the world. Predictable revenue, smooth charts, investors smiling, because MRR looked like gravity itself was on your side. I believed that until the month we crossed our first meaningful subscriber milestone, and I realized too late that recurring revenue doesn't mean recurring trust. It means recurring judgment. Every billing cycle, users wake up and subconsciously ask the same question: is this still worth it? And if the answer even hesitates, you don't just lose money. You lose credibility, because nothing exposes the gap between promise and reality faster than a credit card charge that hits while value feels stale. The subscription economy didn't rise because startups wanted stability. It rose because customers wanted control. They were tired of big upfront payments, tired of being locked into tools that aged poorly, tired of buying products that stopped improving the moment money changed hands. Subscriptions flipped that power dynamic. They told companies, you only get paid if you keep earning it. For users, that felt fair. For founders, it was a silent agreement that most underestimated. A one-time sale lets you disappoint once. A subscription demands that you show up every month with a reason to stay. In the early days, many startups mistook subscriptions as a pricing trick instead of a product philosophy. They took existing services, slapped on monthly plans, and called it innovation. It worked at first. Early adopters are forgiving. They believe in roadmaps. They tolerate rough edges. But subscriptions are unforgiving over time. The cracks always show. If your product doesn't deepen in value as users' needs evolve, churn becomes a slow leak that no amount of new acquisition can outrun. I've watched companies celebrate growing sign-ups while quietly bleeding long-term users, not realizing that subscription businesses don't die loudly, they erode silently. What makes subscriptions powerful is not the billing cadence, it's the relationship it forces you to maintain. You're no longer selling a feature set, you're selling continuity. You're promising progress. That means your roadmap can't be a wish list, it has to be a narrative. Users can feel unfolding. The best subscription startups understand this instinctively. They design their products so value compounds with usage. Data improves outcomes. Communities deepen engagement. And switching costs are emotional before they're technical. Not traps, but roots. Users stay not because they can't leave, but because leaving feels like starting over somewhere worse. But there's a darker side to the subscription economy that founders rarely admit out loud. Predictable revenue tempts complacency. When money arrives automatically, urgency dulls. Teams start building for the average user instead of the passionate one. Pricing tiers multiply to mask weak differentiation. Retention teams form to patch symptoms instead of fixing causes. And worst of all, some startups begin optimizing for forgetfulness, hoping users won't notice small charges accumulating month after month. That's not a business model. That's decay disguised as stability. The hardest lesson I learned was that churn is not a metric problem, it's a truth problem. Users don't leave because they hate you. They leave because you stopped mattering. Something changed in their life, their workflow, their priorities, and your product didn't adapt fast enough. Subscription startups that survive long-term build systems to listen continuously, not quarterly surveys, but signals embedded in behavior. They know when engagement dips before cancellation emails arrive. They treat cancellations as conversations, not failures. And they accept that some churn is healthy because forcing retention at all costs poisons the relationship you're trying to preserve. The subscription economy also reshaped how startups think about monetization timing. Value must precede payment, not follow it. Trials, freemium layers, usage-based hybrids all exist because subscriptions demand trust before commitment. You're asking users to bet on your future execution, not just your current features. That's why the strongest subscription products are obsessive about first impressions. Onboarding is not a tutorial. It's a promise delivery mechanism. If users don't experience meaningful value quickly, no pricing strategy can save you. Looking back, subscriptions didn't make startups more profitable by default. They made them more honest, or at least they punished dishonesty faster. You can't hide behind contracts or sunk costs when users can leave with a click. Every renewal is a small referendum on whether you respected their time, money, and attention. And that pressure reshapes companies from the inside out, forcing hard conversations about what value really means and who you're actually building for. The startups that thrive in the subscription economy are not the ones with the cleverest pricing pages, but the ones that internalize a simple truth. Recurring revenue is earned repeatedly, not captured once. They build cultures where improvement never pauses, where shipping is continuous, and where customer success is not a department, but a mindset shared across product engineering and leadership. Because the moment you treat subscriptions as passive income instead of active responsibility is the moment the decay begins slowly. At first, then all at once. And this is where the story tightens, because once you realize that monetizing services through subscriptions means committing to an endless cycle of proof, you also realize that growth pricing and product are no longer separate conversations, but one ongoing negotiation with users that never really ends. And that realization leads directly into the next phase, where founders must confront the emotional and strategic cost of asking customers to renew their faith every single month and decide whether they are truly prepared to carry that burden as the business scales and the expectations rise. And the sentence does not stop here, because the weight of that realization carries forward into what happens next, when subscription growth meets reality, and the true test begins, and whether you are truly prepared becomes impossible to avoid the moment. Growth accelerates, and the numbers look healthy on the surface, while the cracks underneath start demanding attention. Because scaling a subscription business doesn't just multiply revenue, it multiplies responsibility. And every shortcut you took when you were small comes back louder when thousands or millions of people are now trusting you with a recurring slice of their budget. And this is where many founders quietly realize that subscriptions are not forgiving systems. They are amplifiers of intent, discipline, and neglect all at once. As scale kicks in, the questions change. It's no longer, how do we get more subscribers? But which subscribers should we even have? Because not all recurring revenue is good revenue. Some users churn loudly and teach you something. Others stay silently and drain support, morale, and focus. Subscription startups that mature learn to say no to design pricing that filters for alignment, to accept that reducing MRR in the short term can strengthen the business long term. This is counterintuitive and terrifying when investors are watching dashboards, but it's the difference between a company that grows hollow and one that grows dense. The most dangerous phase is when retention looks acceptable, but enthusiasm is fading. Users aren't angry enough to leave, but they're no longer excited. Engagement flattens, advocacy disappears. This is where many teams panic and layer on features discounts or pricing complexity instead of confronting the real issue: the product stopped evolving in a way that mattered. Subscriptions punish stagnation. You can't coast. You can only renew momentum or watch relevance decay one billing cycle at a time. The founders who survive this phase internalize a brutal mindset shift. They stop thinking in launches and start thinking in rhythms. Weekly value, monthly trust, annual reinvention. They understand that subscription businesses live or die by cadence, not events. Roadmaps become living documents. Feedback loops tighten. The company learns to sense when value delivery lags behind expectation and reacts before cancellations force the conversation. This isn't glamorous work. It's repetitive, emotionally draining, and rarely celebrated. But it's where real durability is built. There's also a personal cost that no one warns you about. When revenue is recurring, failure feels recurring too. Every cancellation email feels like a small rejection. Every downgrade feels like a judgment. Founders who tie their identity too tightly to growth numbers burn out fast in subscription businesses because the feedback is constant and unavoidable. The healthier ones learn to see churn not as betrayal, but as information. They separate self-worth from metrics and focus on stewardship instead of validation. That emotional maturity becomes a competitive advantage no spreadsheet can capture. In the end, the subscription economy doesn't reward clever monetization. It rewards consistency, humility, and respect for users' attention and money. Startups that thrive here treat pricing as a conversation, not a trap. They make it easy to leave because they're confident enough to believe people will come back if value is real. They understand that the true moat in subscriptions is not contracts or features, but habit trust and ongoing relevance. So if you're building a subscription startup, ask yourself the harder questions early. Are you prepared to earn your revenue again and again? Are you building something that gets better with time, or just something that charges monthly? Are you listening deeply enough to know when you're starting to matter less before users tell you with their wallets? Because the subscription economy is not about locking customers in. It's about giving them a reason to stay repeatedly, voluntarily. And that is one of the most demanding promises a startup can ever make. If this hit close to home, leave a comment and share what renewals have taught you about your product so far. And if you want more unfiltered stories from the trenches about building sustainable businesses instead of fragile illusions, subscribe and stay with me, because recurring revenue is easy to admire from the outside, but hard to live with from the inside. And the difference between the two is where real founders are forged.